today, Monday, October 14th, and we are having Daniel with us to talk about the conflict in Ukraine. Welcome back, Dan.
What about that?
Yeah,
Well,
and
go ahead.
yeah, let's start with what's going on right now, considering the European Union and the conflict in Ukraine. Do you think that the support coming from the European Union to the conflict in Ukraine is just fading away, or still there we can consider it that there is still support in Ukraine? Because as we know in the United States, that it seems that if Donald Trump wins, that wouldn't be the case.
Well, I mean, once you mention Trump, it sets off a whole uh, array of alarm bells in my head. This has nothing to do with Trump. It has nothing to do with who the next president is, and the attitude of the Europeans is not independent. They are, lapdogs of U.S. policy at their own peril, and have been since the end of World War II, certainly. But it is fading here, and it's fading in Europe as well. The Germans just said, well, maybe we don't think there's a high. We're not going to send any more Leopards or whatever. I forget. I'm not sure if it was Leopards, but it was. We're not going to send any more something because it doesn't look like they're really in the offing for another serious counteroffensive, and that's code for we're starting to get sick of this. And I think that this has been one of the things that it's always hard to talk about, Nima, on this thing is that you're always talking on 2 or 3 different levels at least. It's like you're talking about Europe. Well, no, you're talking about European elites. You're talking about America. No, there's no such. First of all, America isn't America. Then you have the crisis within the ruling class. Then you have the separation between the ruling class and the people who have nothing to do, nothing at all, zero input into any of these policies. And so you have to kind of, if you want people to understand, and I think that's really the most important part of what we're doing. That's why dialogue works, right? Did I get that right? You want to tell people what's going on because everyone else is lying to us. Everyone is lying to us on so many levels. And so you have to kind of like tear it apart like the layers of an onion, So on the one level that matters, this is not waning or changing or growing. This is nothing except for what it was more or less designed to be, and certainly doomed to be from the beginning. This was always going to go this way and was going this way, except for the extreme push of the faction of the ruling class that allies itself with the neocons and pushes this attempt to attack Russia from as close to within as they will ever be, with the biggest and best armed and best funded proxy they will ever have. And to use NATO as a cover to do that, which is already a cover for U.S. involvement. It's a U.S. war against Russia, but you have, well, it's really Ukraine. Well, I hate to say this, but the Ukrainians have every right to be as hostile and as angry at the West and as specifically the U.S. Military industrial complex as they do against the Russians. They have been used from the beginning. And that's not, 2022. That's not 2014. That's not 2008. That's not 1991. They have been used for at least 2 generations to get at Russia. It is a sick and vile thing that the U.S. has managed to cover up. It's amazing. Harold Pinter's a British political scientist, poet, writer, something like that. He wrote a really neat quote about how the U.S. has gotten away with this forever. Their clever manipulation of reality, of truth, has, left them running the world with clean hands, as if they are the force of good. And they've been getting away with it forever, that people think the Americans are here to the rescue. The Americans are with the white hats. If the Americans hadn't come to the defense of D-Day and climbing Pontiac and Delta Beach and Omaha Beach, and then everybody would be in turmoil. There wouldn't be any democracy. There wouldn't be any, and it so clearly takes over the American mindset that any of our listeners who give a single F about this election circus and whether or not it's Trump or Harris has to look at what this is. You have this person who has never received a single vote, never had a vote for president, not when she pretended to run on her own, nor when she was picked out of a test tube to run against Trump. Never received a single vote. And she is the stalwart defense against the destruction of democracy in America. What kind of idiotic, moronic language is that? It's amazing to even think about it in its own terms once you peel back the layers of the onion. And when I was talking about this, I was thinking about, I'm thinking about this a lot because this is on my mind and on the alternative news and on your channel and a lot of similar channels, what's going on in Ukraine. It's not on the mainstream news. But I realize when I say this, I sound tired or repetitive. I've just discovered an article that I wrote over 10 years ago. It's a simple, short, 500 words, like nothing. It was commissioned for a new channel that was being done by Peter Lavelle and a friend of his. And they posted it. It didn't stay up long because the Russians didn't even like it either. I said back then that this is Monty Python's Dead Parrot. Ukraine is no more. This bird has ceased to be. And this was 10 years ago, summer of 2014, that they had done this coup and they were going to try to make this work. And it was never going to work. The Russians were not up to the task, or they didn't think it was. They didn't. I mean, look at how much they've suffered in trying to write this. It has been. I think we talked about this before. I can say that Putin is patient or shows restraint, but I can't really judge his effort not to have done more in 2014. I mean, look at what they've had to endure after the arming, the rearming, the occupation, and the focusing of all this Western might against Russia, and saying they should have done it sooner is a bit mean-spirited. Like who says that they have to do that to save their people who are under occupation? Let's be honest. That's what this has always been, an occupation of Eastern Ukraine, of the Donbass, under, these ridiculous, the post-Soviet borders have never meant anything. They were always like African borders in some sort of a conference room in Berlin, in 85 or whatever. And now this is what happened with the CIS, with all these borders. It was a disaster for Ukraine for the years following the collapse of the Soviet Union, because you had this toggle of two very different places. And what the U.S. did with all its might was to fund and finance and train the fascists to pursue what Bandera considers, or Banderists consider, to be the only true independence of Ukraine from 1939 to 1945. They say that flat out. They mean that. They are, Hitler's right hand. And there was never any question about that. And so having them take over enough of the country so that they could be the West proxy to threaten Russia. What did these people not study World War II at all? Do they understand? There is no way that is going to succeed. And when they finally dug all of the NATO generals out of the ground in Mariupol and in Kharkov also, which were the kind of the cornerstones of this advanced battalion of nuclear capable sites in against Russia, it became clear for the world, but I think Russian intelligence had known it for years, that they had been building up this network of so-called defense, which was really an occupation for future invasion. This was a means of controlling and threatening Russia. And just the success of the Russophobic propaganda in the U.S. is really, really sickening. I mean, just, that's when my wife and I started drinking a favorite vodka, which was Russian vodka, and then disappeared from the local. They don't sell it anymore. They don't sell like people what canceling Tchaikovsky. It's really juvenile. It has been, just like during the Afghan war and the Iraq war with France and the Freedom Fries. You had these complete morons, denouncing French fries. They tried to rename them as Freedom Fries. They said, well, you're an idiot. You realize that from Belgium. It was always wrong anyway. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about truth. What they care about is the words that they can spout and use to do this. So when you come back to what's happening right now in Ukraine, it is no different than what I probably should. Maybe I can put it in the comments. My article from
here is your article.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, that and it was very. Look at that blue line. I think that's where we're headed, more or less. I think a little further south than that, but there will be some rump state of Ukraine. And you could go back to some of the interviews I had back then. It's exactly what we were saying then. There will be a rump state of Ukraine that is circled around the neo-Nazis in the West, in Galicia, northwest, around Lvov and that area. And I don't know if they'll maintain, control of Kiev or not, but the Russians will stop what this has always been, which was an attempt to occupy and create a well-armed frontline attack spot against it. And to think that they were going to just do this and lie about it, because they lie to their own people so often and so consistently that most of their servants, most of these politicians, have no idea. Look at what the Congressional Black Caucus has been stalwart in its support of Israel. This is a subset of Americans who should be absolutely dying, not literally, but dying to protect Palestinians. The settler colonial victims that, in the same historical elements that they faced. And because of the way the system is run, and because of how the lies filter down like rain, you have people who should be in the know who are in the absolute wrong position all the time. And it's getting, I grew up here. I'm American. My family is American. It's harder than ever. I hear some of my elders and ancestors talk about the 50s, the McCarthy days. Like, and then, you know, where I had an English teacher whose father warned her to cover up that book. If she's reading the Communist Manifesto for some history class, make sure it's covered before you leave this house, young lady, because we don't want pushback. Now, okay, I can't say it's that bad, but is it better when no one knows who the hell Karl Marx is? No one is reading the Communist Manifesto for any college class. In fact, all the college classes are either at journalism, which doesn't exist at all anymore, or what do they call it now? Communications. These fake pseudo-humanity degree mills that do nothing to instill critical thought and encourage people to think about the policies that are being carried out in their name. So again, long version, I know nothing has changed in the paper campaign to do this in Ukraine. But I think it's very important to say to your title, you always choose good headlines. Yes, it is crumbling. Again. Now, if you look back 10 years, what was happening was old men and women walking into fields in the outskirts of Donbass, walking up to tanks and looking at babies, what they consider to be their children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, cousins, you know, kids who were doing this, and put their hands on the tanks. I decided then, after those, and I was on Lavelle's Crosstalk at the time, say, I can see where this is going, because you are never going to kill them all, basically, is what it turns out. These people were talking and saying, wait a minute, where are you going? What are you doing? We're all Russians and Ukrainians. We're all Slavic brothers. What are you doing here? And there were all these pictures. They didn't come much in the Western press, but they were certainly in the Russian press. And they should be. It's not just propaganda. It's knowing that the truth will help you decide. And it's not even a liberating thing. I believe it. The truth will set you free. But if you're doing the dirty work, my God, shouldn't you know what the hell is going on? I think the truth is important for these people. And we've had conversations over the past several weeks, and you always ask me, do they believe this? Do they really think this? And I think in addition to being resisted, right, they need like a slap in the face, like, wake up. What do you really think you are capable of doing to people, changing their brains, changing their minds, so that they will give up a country, a homeland that their family has lived on for hundreds of years? I mean, why is that possible? And so you have a lot of anti-Western philosophy that says, oh, this is anti-religious, it's anti-humanity, it's and I think it's just capitalism, commodification. You can make anything, turn anything into a commodity, sell it for more than it costs you to make it, and you keep the profit. Boom. So then it's a machine. Do that with everything. everything is a nugget of possibility to convince people that, convince them of what, actually? That Ukraine, that using Ukraine to attack Russia is somehow in the best interests of the American people, of the people who just suffered destruction by Hurricane Milton or Helene. You know, and Milton is the reason that Biden didn't come to Ramstein. You saw that, right? He canceled, right? Which is exactly like Olaf Scholz or whoever said they don't really need our leopards just yet. This is backing out. And that is why I started with the actual sympathy for the Ukrainians, especially the lower levels of the people who have been ripped out of, grocery stores and sent to the front to die, that they are just being used. And this is what happens to the proxies. They say, well, is a hurricane here. You have to understand. You didn't give a crap about the last hurricane that destroyed the Tennessee Valley. But now you have to stay home because of Milton. And you have to watch to know, what's going on. What is also happening at the same time. He refused to go to Ramstein. On the same weekend, there is some sort of rumor of a meeting, face-to-face meeting of Putin with Pezeshkian in Ashgabat, the capital of Turkmenistan, before the BRICS summit. Now, I don't know. There's an Indian publication had written about this, that there were rumors of it because they were meeting anyway at a commemoration of the 300-year birthday of a famous poet. And so, but why? Why now? Are they advancing the signing of the Russian-Iranian Defense Pact? Right? And then, okay, go ahead another weekend. Then you have the BRICS summit with 24 heads of state coming to be part of this. This, if you look at the Americans backing out and the rest of the non-Western world stepping up, that's the kind of movement. I know it's kind of poetic, like they're not related. It doesn't, but you do have a kind of a yin-yang shift in physical space. They're not going to keep sending stuff to Ukraine. Biden isn't going to even come to Ramstein if he remembers what country it's in or whatever. But Putin will talk to his counterpart in Iran, and these other heads of state will meet to start to slowly back in, right? To ditch the dollar slowly, to make their own pacts slowly, but securely. And, on the same weekend, Poroshenko, Pyotr Poroshenko, what we call the Chocolate King, he was the one who took over after the coup, and he was the one who actually started the ATO in Donbass. And he said to a Kiev media source that people got it all wrong. If they held, elections in Ukraine today, Putin would beat Zelensky. This is Poroshenko said this to a public source. And it's like, you never hear any of this. You never hear any of this in Western press. But the thing is that they have been used to an unbelievable extent. They have been slaughtered to an unbelievable extent. And it is, it makes sense that Zelensky is not seen as an ongoing hero or even a representative of the Ukrainian people. He's a representative of the West and kowtowing to the neo-Nazis from the very moment he stepped into power. He was elected to solve things with the Russians. Then he went to the front and talked to Wolf, what's this? One of these neo-Nazi Azov types, real hardcore. who would talked about eating Russian bones and stuff like that. Real, Banderist. And he said, he was here because we had to make this work. And they told him on TV, they told him actually on film, get out of here. You don't call the shots here. He said, well, I'm the president. And they said, no way. We're here to kill Russians, basically. And we don't care what you say or what anyone says. We're not stopping this at all. And we don't care what anyone thinks. Russians are evil. Russians are scum, and et cetera, et cetera. And his perspective changed from that encounter. He was like, oh my God, I am never going to survive this unless I adopt a different role, right? He's an actor. What the hell? I'll tell. Okay. Oh, I can't be. Okay. Well, I can't be that Shakespearean tragic role. So I'll have to go into this Darth Vader. Okay. Yeah. I'll try that. And it has worked out for him quite well until, if the rumors are true, I don't know that Kamala Harris when she met with him, she asked him to pick a successor in case he is captured or killed. I can't imagine that a proxy handholder would do that, but I know they have. I know they have done it. This isn't like I said, there's nothing new. I'm not touting my own horn from 10 years ago. I'm talking about Pinochet, Mossadegh. I'm talking about the history on the ground of these, torturers, murderers. They are out to seize control of everything they can, and they can only be stopped by a resistance that is determined to stop them.
Daniel, getting back to your article here, you said that in those days you didn't have any positive reaction to your article. What was the reason, in your opinion, in those days?
Well, it's funny. It has disappeared from everyone who published it at the time, and I think the original commissioner who asked me to write it was it was going to be kind of a new way of giving a pro-Russian news source that was in English, that was not what kind of a precursor to what has been going on, on YouTube and Telegram and everything else, VK, since. But I think that the idea that when I said even Putin and his circle are mistaken, if they truly think they can put Humpty Dumpty back together again, right? And I said, though, I suspect they may already know this and are engaging in some posturing around the issue. They didn't want that even, and who would take this as most obvious are the Russians, but they didn't want to do it yet back then. Remember, this is right after, this is before, I don't think I even said Minsk II. It was a Minsk protocol, right, or agreement. So it was right in the middle of all this. That was when it was published, but it was probably in May or June. I'm not sure. I think that's what it was, that it was pushing the Russians in a direction that they were not yet prepared to go. I mean, certainly they were preparing as we speak. They certainly were in favor of the Donetsk, Lugansk People's Republics and all that stuff. But they were not officially saying that Minsk was a scam, right? We had to wait for Angela Merkel to tell us that 10 years later, right? They thought they really, and I remember at the time, a lot of us who were watching this were chomping at the bit. And I think maybe impolite or impatient at that. Why doesn't he do more? Why doesn't he do this? Because it was like, Minsk thing. This is such crap. These are like treaties that the U.S. signed with native tribes in the American West. This is complete BS. They're never gonna follow this. They don't believe it. They're just wasting time. And sometimes it sucks to be right. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that, they didn't know that. I think they did know it. But it wasn't time yet to say it out loud, I think. But I think it has, and what the opposition did was chase us down. They chased down voices in the opposition and on the left and, tried to paint us as Russian agents, as this, that, all this crap, or that I was nobody. I had been writing for 35 years, and they pushed a thing saying this guy is nobody. Nobody should listen to this. It's just what happens. It doesn't mean you don't tell the truth, but sometimes, you pay a price, and I don't care one way or another.
Do you think that when it comes to the conflict in Ukraine, we know that neocons in the United States are behind this policy, but how about the Middle East then? How do you think, in your opinion, who's running the show in the Middle East? Is the Israeli lobby in the United States? It's the United States, these neocons who are making the same set of policies in Ukraine? Is the Israeli government forcing the United States to support their policies in the Middle East? How do you find this concept, this endless conflict in the Middle East, and who's running the show?
Well, they are the same policies, aren't they? I mean, it is the same scripts, the same weapons, the same lying and cover up and plausible deniability, this constant separation from the result of the actions. They're identical, not just the Middle East and Ukraine, but everywhere that the U.S. and its older brother, Anglo-Saxon empire have done for half a millennium. This is how you bring law in order to suppress resistance and suppress the people. You pretend to be bringing civilization. And that has been built up all over the world. That's not just the Middle East or Ukraine, but Middle East is a huge boiling kettle. It's not just the U.S. Obviously, it was created by Balfour, by the British. There is the U.S. did not create Theodore Herzl. They did not invent Zionism. Even the Christian Zionists that I talked about on an earlier show were following this idea. But when you take Theodore Herzl from the beginning, you look at what was from the League of Nations before the Second World War, before the establishment, before the world's decided on the UN. The original idea had Ode to Joy as its banner theme, and it was "Brother, lift thy country's, brother, sing thy country's anthem, tout thy land's undying fame." And it was about individual nationality. Ethnocentric nationalities were what made a nation a nation. And Herzl was just kind of piggybacking off of this to a certain extent. I know I'm oversimplifying. Don't go, commenters, don't go in. I know this is 1,000 years of history. I know I'm saying it very simplified, but that all for one and one for all. This was the anthem of the League of Nations that they wanted to be a part of. So this was something that happened in that way, ethnocentric nationalism, or a nationalism that was dependent on grabbing a landmass or whatever, however you want to. It's what it was part of the settler colonialism that made that reality work for the Western system. And so that was just another of these examples. But of course, as a settler colonial project, like the British in North Ireland, like the Dutch and the British in South Africa, like the Anglo-Saxon settlers in North America, this obviously has always meant a clash, a suppression, and a occupation, and a genocidal displacement of the indigenous inhabitants. And when it comes to how it comes all the way up to today, there's no question that it is the same people who are doing these, who are pushing this. And when, the Israeli lobby in the United States has an enormous amount of power, but they're also these same people. They are the neocons. It's not the same. There's no reason. Listen to like Netanyahu talking about greater Israel, or who is the is a minister, one of the ministers who
Smotrich, finance minister.
Finance minister. He's the one who came up and basically just said it flat out. Like, this should all be, Lebanon should be Israel. Jordan should be Israel. Like this vile sickness. It sounds like Manifest Destiny. It sounds like American Indian killing settlers who decided the whole of the U.S. continent was God-given to them. And so why is that any different? It's exactly the same idea. The fact of running the American system is both deeper and more complex, and not at the same time. It's the same people. Why does Brzezinski doesn't need a Zionist kind of chapter to run Charlie's War to start the Afghanistan thing? That doesn't. It's an incredible mix, an overlap of like a cesspool, or a what is the other thing they say, like a triple storm, that it all, like, it's a tornado, hurricane, a volcano, all at the same time. And so I really think that the Israelis, to the extent that they are independent at all, they don't have the means. They desperately need the U.S. to keep supplying arms, intelligence, guidance, munitions, weapons. Now they're moving THAAD into somewhere in Israel, right there, and 100 troops to help oversee it, or whatever they're doing in Ukraine. Same thing. Patriots, THAADs. I don't know if THAADs are Patriots or Patriots are THAADs, but they're all from, the similar manufacturers. And I don't see, there is a difference that I think you got your finger on, that they'll just pull out of Ukraine and just, I have some sort of rump state. It will fade, and it will be a huge victory for the Russia, China, Iran axis against Western expansion. The Middle East is tougher because there is so much pressure and so much control over what the U.S. is supposed to do for Israel, or for itself, using Israel as a proxy in any of those. But I have to say that in that sense, this is a new day. It's very much like Ukraine. As you have Iran, Hezbollah, that any one of them could be taking a settlement on their own fronts, that the Yahoo decided to open all at once. What an insane idea that was. But they're not giving up on Hamas, and they're not giving up on Gaza. Yemen isn't, and Iran is not. The Houthis are not. I mean, yeah, I already said Yemen. Hezbollah, and of course, Hamas. And so the real danger is that when the hegemon is a cornered dog, they still have very sharp teeth. And you can't, I mean, you can't even get at their tail. They will cause, look at, there are people are posting things about kids burning. They're bombing an outdoor hospital, burning tents with children in them. It is what beaten bullies do. When they are backed into a corner, they lash out and they kill whatever, all civilians. What did they do in what now this Christian village in Lebanon that they killed 35 people, and they've killed 2,500 people in Lebanon at least. And they will strike out at the weakest, at civilians, at anybody they can, preteens, babies, and that is a sign of evil, but it is also a sign of desperation. I don't, it is hard to take any kind of comfort in that at all, but it is a truth. It is a sign of incredibly desperate circumstances. Their economy is absolutely in shambles. They are a thread away from self-annihilation. And there is some sort of a rump state there too. I don't know what it will be, but it will never be what it was on October 6th, 2023. I don't see that.
Yeah. Before wrapping up, Dan, let me again show this map that you put on your article. If you were to,
it was a visual. I didn't draw the map.
yeah,
yeah.
But the question is right now, if you were to put the map of China together with Taiwan, how would you paint Taiwan in 10 years?
Taiwan?
Yeah.
Oh, it's not going to be blue. It's going to be red. It's just, it'll be exactly what it is now. It will be a province of China. When the U.S. decides that it cannot win like a part of its encirclement by taking over Taiwan, and when that lady gets out of office, and they learn that there are benefits to being part of the country that they've been part of since 1949, then it will just be, like Macau, like Hong Kong, like any other maybe semi-autonomous region. I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of regions in Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union that have done that. And then it will be a federation. There will be something that will, but it will not be South Korea, Donbass. No, it will not. It will not be some sort of a rump state with a few anti-communists on it. Chiang Kai-shek is dead. let's remember, that is not. And like right now, as we're speaking, they are surrounding the island with their own military parade, I was going to say, training exercises, because it's like Nantucket. in Massachusetts or another. It's part of China, so that's what they're doing. And the US cannot. It would have to explode beyond. I do not see failing in Ukraine, failing in the Middle East really badly. However that winds up, this is a huge failure. And to say the next one is a winning escalation in Taiwan, I don't even think the American people are that stupid. We're pretty stupid. We've been dumbed down with a negative education for a couple generations. But I don't see how lose what. Americans gamble all the time. Why you're going to go and play the lottery? You're not going to waste money on this. What is it? The same idea, but well, it's much further away, and it's surrounded by nuclear powers. So, and maybe a few million troops, and the strongest Navy and Air Force and air defense that has ever. So we'll go slow. Like, nah, I don't think so. What are they going to try to do? I don't know. It is the next on the agenda. You're right. It is next. That's why they're like turning down the heat in on Ukraine so that they can move to Taiwan. But no, I don't see them getting any further there. I really don't. He said, hopefully. Please. Please let me be right. I'm not a religious man, but I hope I'm right.
Thank you, Dan, for being with us today. Great pleasure as always.
Okay, boa noite.
Boa noite.